The snowfall that evening came down in slow, heavy flakes, soft as feathers and cold as regret. I stood at the edge of my son Mark's porch, a paper bag held tightly in gloved hands. Inside it lay a freshly baked pie that still smelled of cinnamon and childhood, and a hand-knitted sweater I had spent weeks stitching. My boots sank deeper into the untouched snow as laughter and cheerful music floated from inside the warm house. Through the frosted windows, I could see golden light and silhouettes moving, my son, his wife, their friends, and children celebrating a party that I had not been invited to. I waited, breath visible in the winter air, hoping someone would notice me. For a heartbeat, I imagined a warm smile and a welcoming voice calling, "Come inside, we missed you." That hope vanished when the door swung open abruptly. My daughter-in-law appeared in a shimmering dress, her face freezing the moment she saw me.
"What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp as the wind. "This is a family event. You should have called first." I swallowed my hurt and tried to speak gently. "I just came to bring something for Ethan's birthday. He used to love my apple pie." Before she could answer, Ethan ran forward. Instead of a hug, he scooped snow and threw it at me. "Go away! You're not supposed to be here!" he shouted. Laughter erupted inside. My son appeared, but after a brief conflicted look, he closed the door. The click of the latch was louder than any slam. I stood there a few moments more, snow melting on my eyelashes like tears I refused to let fall. Then I turned and walked away into the silent street. But this was only the beginning.
I was 28 when the story that poisoned my name first began. Back then, I worked long, exhausting shifts as a nurse's aide in a small elder care facility outside Toledo. The pay barely paid the bills, but I believed that kindness and honest work could keep a soul clean in a world that often forgot what compassion looked like, and why husbands' families saw life differently. They measured a person's worth in the size of their bank accounts and the shine of their last names. They owned real estate, lived in polished houses, and treated dignity as a luxury item instead of a birthright. I married their youngest son, a quiet man who absorbed his father's arrogance like second-hand perfume. I thought love would soften him. It didn't. One night at work, I walked into a room and found my father-in-law drunk, cornering a young nurse who was crying with her uniform ripped. I pulled her away and helped her into a taxi. My conscience wouldn't allow silence. So I filed a report. I believed truth would protect us, that I was wrong. Within days, the newspapers printed a story painting me as a scheming woman trying to destroy a respected businessman for attention. My husband packed a suitcase and walked out that same night. The town stopped looking at me with sympathy and started looking at me with suspicion. Doors shut, jobs disappeared. A stranger spat near my shoes in the grocery store and muttered, "Shameless." I didn't fight back. I worked more hours, lived smaller, and prayed that time would clear my name. But bitterness spreads faster than truth, and its roots follow you into every room. And those roots would later come for my son, too. Life didn't collapse overnight. It dissolved slowly, the way old wallpaper peels without anyone noticing until the room looks different. After my husband left, I became both mother and provider. I worked days at the nursing home changing bandages and speaking gently to patients who barely remembered their own names, and nights cleaning office floors while the world slept. I saved every spare dollar in a small tin labeled college mark. I kept telling myself that sacrifice would one day bloom into better days, and for a while it seemed like it would. Mark grew into a bright young man. His school certificates were my trophies, his softness my pride. But visiting his father's side on weekends slowly changed his world. He came home quieter, his smiles shorter. One night he looked up at me and asked, "Mom, why did you hurt Grandpa?" I told him I didn't. He didn't believe me. A lie repeated enough times becomes truth in the ears of a child. When he went to college, I sold my mother's. wedding ring, and the last small piece of land she left me to pay his entrance fees. I sat in the last row at his graduation, clapping until my hands stung, while his wife's family filled the seats up front. I gave him most of my savings as a wedding gift, not realizing that in their world, love was measured in usefulness, not memory. Over the years, the invitations thinned, then stopped. Holidays passed without a chair for me at the table. When I arrived unexpectedly once, carrying a homemade cake, I was told quietly at the gate, "You should have called. It's complicated." That was when I understood. I wasn't family anymore. I had become an inconvenience. But life has strange ways of returning what people discard. The night before Ethan's birthday, I stayed awake knitting by the lamplight, finishing the last stitches of a navy blue sweater, soft wool warmed with every thread of hope I still carried. I baked his favorite pie before dawn, the kind he once devoured with sticky fingers, eyes shining as he said, "Grandma, nobody cooks like you." I wrapped both in simple brown paper, tied with twine, the way gifts used to feel before money started replacing love. Snow was falling again when I reached their house. The windows glowed like promises I was no longer part of. Laughter, music, voices, it all drifted into the cold night as I stood on the doorstep and rang the bell. When the door opened, Claire's smile vanished on sight. Her voice was thin, polished, and cold enough to freeze the air. "This is a private celebration. You should have called." I tried to explain I wouldn't stay, just deliver the gift. She began closing the door until Ethan appeared. His neat little blazer made him look older than his years. For a heartbeat, I saw the little boy who once clung to my apron. But then Claire looked at him, and he turned away without even a greeting. Mark appeared next, wine glass in hand, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, it's not a good time." I left the bag and walked back through the snow, telling myself at least they'd received the gifts. But the next morning, I found them in the trash, pie smeared, paper soaked, my card crumpled and stained. A message followed soon after. "Please stop showing up. You're confusing him. You are not welcome here." It wasn't just rejection. It was a final erasure. And something inside me finally woke up after the pie in the trash and the message telling me not to return. I went very still inside. Pain can make a person loud, but it can also make them deliberate. I didn't scream, didn't plead, didn't rush to defend myself. Instead, I walked to the drawer where I kept old paperwork, documents most people forget exist once trust has taken their place. The house Mark lived in still carried my name on a portion of the ownership. I had helped pay for it years ago, believing I was building a home for the future, not a cage I'd be locked out of. A few signatures later, my share belonged to someone else, a buyer who had no sentimental ties and no reason to soften the legal terms. Notices were delivered, 60 days to vacate. A new reality began shifting their world, the same way their silence had shifted mine. Calls came, messages flooded, apologies arrived too late. For years, I had been invisible until my absence finally had weight, but vengeance wasn't what I wanted. Justice had already been done, not in shouting, but in showing that a mother's heart is not an endless well to draw from without giving back. Then one morning, a small envelope arrived in uneven handwriting. Inside was a note from Ethan. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I miss you. I didn't understand." I read it gently, then knitted a simple scarf and mailed it back with a short message, not promising return, not reopening old wounds, simply wishing him warmth and wisdom, that I now live in a quiet cottage where no one knows my history. The snow outside is peaceful, the air calm. I learned something here. Some wounds heal not by going back, but by finally walking forward.